What we do here is go back.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Fixin' a Ride. This is Andrew here, and I got some projects going on. It is springtime. You cannot deny it. It was like 65 degrees yesterday, and the weather's getting warmer. Grass is starting to grow. Tracks are open. The first track was open for dirt butt motocross. Was last Sunday, actually, I think, was a race out at Log Road. So things are progressing. So it's time to start working on the bike. I got a bunch of projects up, little stuff that I'm doing to it, but we're gonna go ahead and get into that. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button and the alert bell. Don't forget to smash the like button. Always appreciate that. Check us out on Instagram as well as TikTok. So let's get into it. All right, so what we're doing today, I got my 06 CRF250r here. We're gonna replace the cam in here. And this cam is actually a stage 1 hot cam that came in a 2007 that I got in my shed still. I'm gonna end up rebuilding that. And I have an 08 CRF250r cam that I'm gonna be putting in here. I heard they have a little bit better power range, so I'm gonna go ahead and swap them out today. So I'll show you the steps here. It's pretty easy. You do not have to take your subframe off, just so you know. I ended up replacing the bushing bag here because every time I would set the bike down off of the stand, I could hear a tiny little tink coming from the shock somewhere. And sure enough, when I pulled this out, it was, just a hair loose. And that's just enough to, make that noise. So I did that, and then I adjusted the shock spring preload here. All I did is I did a full turn. I backed it out a full turn so I get about 3 millimeters more in sag. We're going to see how that goes as far as racer sag. But the first thing you want to do is obviously pop your ignition coil cap there off, and then you're going to undo these 2 bolts. First you want to pull this breather tube off, and then you're going to undo these 2 10 millimeter bolts. So let's do that real quick. All right, and the valve cover will typically come off mostly with the gasket, but then you'll have to pop this side of the gasket off of the head. All right, so the next thing, you don't have to do this stuff in this order as well, but while I'm in here, I'm gonna go ahead and check the intake and exhaust clearances just to make sure that they're good. So the first thing you wanna do is get the engine to where it's at top dead center on the compression stroke. All right, so you can see the lobes right now for the intake. It's this and this. This is for the exhaust. This is your rocker arm for the exhaust. So as the lobe passes by here, this roller, it pushes up the roller. There's a pivot point right here, and it rocks over. That's why it's called a rocker arm, obviously. And then these 2 tabs here push down on the exhaust valve stems. I mean, technically it gets pushed down on the shims first and then on the big valve stems. So we are going to get this thing in the right position here. All right, so actually I was already on it. Okay, so you can tell when the lobes are facing backwards, you can tell you're on the compression stroke, for one, because as you're kicking it over, it'll get harder to turn the engine over. You can remove the spark plug. It's a 5/8 inch socket. You can pull a spark plug out and you can just look down in there. You'll see the top of the piston come up as well. But also, if you have the lobes back on the compression stroke, you should be able to have some type of play in this rocker arm. And it's just a hair. It's only like 11 thousandths. So what we're going to do now is check for 5 thousandths on both of the intakes. And what you want to do is just slide it down in here. Good on that side. Oh, it's a little tight on that side. Oh, that's really loose. Let me see if I can get a 5 in there. So after 70 hours, this thing moved. So let's see if I can fit 4.5 thousandths in there. So this is a 1.5 and a 3.5 and a 3. Oh yeah, and that's still loose. That's what I'm saying. I should be able to get the 5 in there. Like, it doesn't feel like there's really any drag at 4.5, unless it's like 4 3/4. It just barely fits in there. You gotta cram it though. So I'm gonna say it's probably more like 4 and... Alright, so 5 fits on that side, no problem. Alright, it's in there, but it just seems like quite a bit of drag. So, you can write that down if you'd like for your own bike, and then move on to exhaust. The exhaust is typically 11 thousandths. And I like to scoot it in here from this side. So 11 fits in there, but nine. So they're both like 9, and I'd say probably 9, and then 5, and about 4.75, because that one's maybe 4.5. So those are still within specs. So it's good. You always want to check that first before you get going. All right. So the next thing we're going to look at here is the cam, and you have 2 lines on the cam. There's one right there, and there's one on the other side. See this little M right there? What we're going to do is we're going to pop this cam out, and we're going to put the new one in without letting this chain drop. Or, you know what? Actually, it doesn't even matter if the chain drops. We're going to put it in the same spot here. So we know that it's on the compression stroke. We know that the lobes are back. And so everything else is already timed up. We won't even have to bother taking out the view plug on the stator side or the clutch side. So there's 4 bolts on top that you want to pull. I'll show you how to do that. It's pretty easy. All right, so the next step is to loosen the cam chain tensioner. It's a 5/16 inch bolt or 8mm. I'm going to pull this bolt all the way out. Set that aside. And then what you want to do is take a flathead and a pair of vice grips. Stick that in there and turn it to the right until it stops. Twist it all the way in and put your vice grips on the shaft. And just let it sit there. All right, now we'll move to taking off the cam bearing caps. Get your 10mm. Now there's a couple things you want to make sure of. When you pull these out, I just kind of loosen all four first, just a hair, and then I go back and get on the rest of the way. Now there's little half rings in here that keep the bearings from moving side to side. They are underneath the cap. And so when you pull this cap up, you want to make sure that it doesn't drop down into this galley here. A little bit more light. And these caps only go on one way. It says left and right. The arrow points towards the intake side. All right, now like I said, you want to make sure that when you pull these off, you don't forget about that. All right, so I got the cam bolts already unbolted. And so you got to make sure that when you take these caps off here, that you don't forget about the retaining ring that's on the inside of these caps. They will stick to the bottom of the cap, but then they'll also fall down into this oil galley here. Right there. So you just want to account for that. Set this off to the side. Okay, so you can see that the cam's loose because the chain's loose now. There's the other one. Also note the difference in length of the bolts in the back compared to the bolts in the front. Okay, so the next step is to move this bearing inward. And what that does is that allows you to drop the cam downward and pull the chain off of the cam. And one thing you want to have ready is like a screwdriver or something to stick in the cam chain so it doesn't fall down into the cam chain oil galley there. So we get the bearing out of the way. All right, there's the old cam. Looks like it's still in pretty good condition. And you know what's funny is this never really worked. It does slightly lift up on the exhaust valve rocker arm. All right. So this is the cam. It's all cleaned up and lubed. And we're going to install it just like this to where the lobes are facing backwards. And then we're going to line up the two marks on the cam to be parallel with the top of the cylinder head. All right, so we got the cam in there and we look pretty darn close. I think I might be off one tooth though. Yeah. Okay, so you can see the one line right there and the other one's down below. So if you take and twist this just a hair, not enough to twist the crank, but this one right here was actually on this side, was coming up above. So that means I'm off a tooth. So what you want to do, you want to lift the chain to where it pops out this way and then sneak it up over one tooth and then just carry the chain over the same way. It's easier said than done, that's for sure. All right, so let's see where it's at. That's sneaking it one tooth over. So now that we got it in the right position, we're going to slip the bearing back over in the right spot, the left side bearing, and then we're going to put the rings on, the caps, and then we're going to check the valve clearance once again. Now if you're careful, just hold the ring up in there like that. And it'll typically pop in place. Get both of those started. Same thing on this right side. Get those started. And you could just snug these down. They don't, in my opinion, they don't have to be torqued down because there's space in there. So as long as they're snug, and these are only 12 foot-pounds a piece. Alright, get your feeler gauges out. We're going to start with 4 thousandths. Kind of disappointed that those are a little tighter than they were. That's fine. Oh wow, they're both good. And they feel even too, that's weird. 5 and 5, man, those feel perfect. Alright, so let's check the exhaust. I think those were at 9. Those shouldn't have moved. Well, good deal. One thing that wouldn't hurt, really, you might want to, while you're in there, check your lifter cups for any damage. So we'll do that real quick. Probably should have done that already. Alright, so these are your lifter cups. And be careful because a lot of the times the shim will stick to the bottom. And it did. Just want to check for cracking or damage, galling, scoring. Galling is transfer of metal from one surface to another. But we're looking good here, so. So that one looks good. Yep, that one came out too. Right, this one was a newer one, so it's a 165. Everything looks good inside there. All right, so not sure if you guys can see these. Like I said, you just want to make sure there's no cracks or anything in there. That's the little button on the bottom. The right, when the head blew on this one, the right valve let go. This was cracked. Actually, this had a hole in the center of it, and this piece was gone. And I found 3 pieces, and that's all that there was. So, like 3 pieces that actually came out of it. So I found all 3. I found 2 in the top of the head. You can go back and look at the video. The third one was down inside the stator flywheel reservoir area. And it actually took out the gear for the oil pump right as I shut it down or when I was turning it over or something. And so I put a new gear in there and it's been fine since. All right, so we'll get this cam back in there and bolt it up. These surfaces look normal, so that's good too. You want to push and pull on this roller right here. Side to side's normal. But if you feel any back and forth, like then it's worn. You'll need to replace that. There we go. All right, so this side is high. So you're going to want to pop the chain over that way. Let's put the bearing back in there. All right, looking good there. It's pretty easy to do once you've done it a couple times, that is. All right, so we'll get this thing bolted back in. All right, and then like I said, 12 foot-pounds. All right, so now we're going to release the cam chain tensioner. All right, so now that the cam chain tensioner is done, we're going to go ahead and put this bolt back in here. And that's just a snug up. It's maybe 6 foot-pounds. All right, so we're going to go ahead and put the valve cover back on. If you leave the seal that goes from the spark plug tube to the valve cover, in the valve cover, you typically will have to take your thumb and kind of push outward as you're pushing down. I took the liberty of cleaning up my valve cover bolts as well as the seals. These get torqued to 7 foot-pounds. You want to put your breather tube back on. Put your spark coil back in. Our last step is go ahead and put the gas tank back on. You'll typically want to slip the fuel line in first. We'll put the petcock back into the frame. Snug it up. Put the fuel line back on and tuck it up underneath the holder. All right, now I just go ahead and put the shroud back on. All right, nice. That is it, guys. Alright guys, that is it. I hope the video was informative for you. And yeah, like I said, it's pretty simple. You just pop the thing apart, put the thing back in. And if, you know, like I said, if you don't move the crank when it's already in position, you just put the cam back where it was on the chain and you're good to go. So, alright guys, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the alert bell. Smash the like button. I always appreciate that. Check us out on Instagram and check us out on TikTok. So we'll see you guys in the next video. Don't forget to come on back. God bless. Stay safe. Riding season's just about here, guys. The tracks are going to open. Not this weekend, but next week. We had a lot of rain this week. So we'll see you in the next video. So come on back. All right.